Can I keep running through this pain? This must be one of the most common questions I get as a physiotherapist. And the answer is, well, yeah, probably. However, as with most things, it's not quite that simple. So in this episode, we're going to be breaking this question down into 6 separate questions to help you understand how you might be able to run through pain. Our 6 questions are, is this a niggle or an injury? Can I run through the pain? Do I need to take a rest from running? Will I be able to run my race? How do I run through pain? And how do I catch up to my training plan? Hi guys, welcome back to the Adaptive Zone podcast. My name is Matthew Boyd. I'm a physiotherapist and running coach. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe. And if you're so inclined, share it with a friend. Today, we're going to be answering the question, can I run through pain? However, before we get to that, we have to decide if the pain that we're talking about is a niggle or a real injury. The difference between a niggle and an injury is not an easy thing to determine. In fact, it's best left up to a qualified professional. So the question is, do I need to get this looked at? Well, if in doubt, yeah. However, if runners ran to the doctor every time they felt some kind of pain, we wouldn't have any room in the hospitals for any of the sick people. So I have a few little rules of thumb that I like to use to help runners decide if they need to get a painful area looked at. First on the list, give it a week, but no more. If the pain goes away within a week, carry on, consider it a niggle, and just get on with your training. However, if it sticks around for longer than a week, it's probably worth having that looked at. Second up, if you're limping, get it checked. This one seems kind of obvious, but basically if you can't walk without limping due to pain, then that's obviously a fairly significant pain, probably a real injury, and really you should get that looked at. Number 3, if you've had this pain before, get it checked. The reason is that the best predictor of future running injuries is previous running injuries. So if you've had trouble with a specific area before, there's a good chance if it's coming back that it's going to be more of an issue than just a niggle, and it's worth getting it looked at sooner rather than later. And lastly, if you have pain at night, you have to get that checked immediately. Obviously, running injuries shouldn't be hurting when you're not running. So if you're having pain at rest or at night, that may be the sign of a more serious pathology, and really that needs to be looked at immediately. So now that you've decided whether this is an injury or just a niggle, now we need to answer the question, can I run through the pain? When working with injured runners, complete rest from running is almost never necessary. So running through pain is part of the rehabilitation process. However, it's not as simple as just ignoring the pain. If you caught the episode on running injuries, you'll understand that placing stress on an injured tissue is actually helpful in the sense that it allows that injured tissue to adapt to the stress and actually facilitates the rehabilitation process. In this way, you can use running as a way to rehabilitate your own injury. However, if you're going to do this, you're going to need to learn to listen to the injured area and adjust your training accordingly. The pain traffic light system that we discussed in the episode on avoiding running injuries is an excellent tool to help you keep running through the pain. So how does the pain traffic light system work? Well, if you're running along and you just feel a very mild pain, let's say a 0 to 3 on a 1 to 10 scale, you can consider that green light pain, and green light just means keep going. However, if you're experiencing more severe pain, let's say anything higher than a 6 out of 10 on a 1 to 10 pain scale, then that really is a red light pain, and just like with the traffic lights, red light means stop. So what's orange light pain? Well, orange light pain is when you're running along and you can feel the pain, and it's there, but it's not that bad. It's sort of uncomfortable, but tolerable. It fades away quickly after the run, maybe within 20 minutes. It's not getting worse the more you run. It's not getting worse each time you run. And it's a sort of 4 or 5 out of 10 on a 1 to 10 pain scale. Just like with the traffic lights, orange light pain means proceed with caution. So you're not necessarily going to increase the volume or intensity of your training, but what you're doing at the minute is okay. The other thing to consider if you're planning to run through pain is the pain stable? And this means that from one run to the next, it's not getting a little bit worse. When it is, I call that snowballing, and clearly that's not heading in a good direction, and it's best to get that looked at as soon as possible. This brings me to another important point. Getting injuries looked at sooner rather than later is almost always going to shorten your recovery time. The reason is that a mild injury or a mild pain, we can kind of keep you running and get that settled down while you keep training. However, if you wait until the pain is so bad that you can't run, we're going to need to take some time off in order to let it calm down. Now, a lot of runners are apprehensive about going to the physio because they think the physio is just going to tell them to rest. And while that might be the case sometimes, most of the time, a physiotherapist will know that avoiding running is just going to let tissues like muscles and tendons and joints and bones become somewhat deconditioned and intolerant of the stresses of running. So they're only really going to recommend rest if it's absolutely necessary. And the thing is, if you've been told to rest by a health professional and you don't think that you necessarily need to rest, then just go get a second opinion. If they tell you to rest as well, then you probably need to rest. Okay, next up we have, do you need to take a rest from running? As a physiotherapist dealing with runners, these are some of the things that I look for in a runner to decide if we need to take a complete rest break. Number one is red light pain that comes on immediately when you run. And as we discussed before, red light pain is like anything more than a 6 out of 10. And if that comes on straight away within a minute or two of running, then almost certainly we need to take at least a week off to let that area settle down. So I'll usually just have runners jump on the treadmill in the clinic and ask them to run. And if they're getting pain, I get them to give it a score or use those traffic lights. And if it's up in the red light zone more than 6 out of 10, then we need to take at least a week off running, unfortunately. The other thing I look for is pain with walking. So if you're getting pain with just walking, then almost certainly running is just going to be too stressful for that injured area. And taking a week off is going to give it a chance to calm down a bit. Now, if you need to take a week off from running or more, then you should definitely be working with your local physiotherapist to help you with your rehabilitation plan in order to get you running again. What I usually do is when someone's ready to start running again, we'll start doing 1 minute run and then 1 minute walk and repeat for a few repetitions. Then the next day we add another one, the next day we add another one, and we keep doing that and build it up and see how much you can tolerate before the pain starts to come back. Okay, next up, will I be able to run my race? Well, using the pain traffic light system described above, you should be able to get running at some amount. Now, the question is, will your fitness increase enough running at that amount to run the race that you're training for? Obviously, this depends on a number of factors. How bad is the injury? How long is it until the goal race? How much more of a ramp up in training volume and intensity is coming in your upcoming training weeks? All of these things will factor into whether you're going to be ready to run on race day. So it's not really possible for me to say yes or no in a video like this. And even then, the answer is usually maybe. So what we want to do is use that pain traffic light system to get running in some respect. Once you've figured out how much running the injury will tolerate in that first week, you're going to look back at the week and say, okay, well, I kept my pain in that orange light zone. Next week, I can add a little bit more. So I can either add a little bit more volume or I can add a little bit more intensity. Adding a bit more volume would be adding like a kilometer to each of your runs or maybe just a few extra minutes. Adding a bit more intensity will be adding something like hill sprints or sprint intervals into the mix. I always caution people against adding both at once. What you want to do is look back on your week and see how much did your injury tolerate. The following week, you can add a little bit more. I usually start with volume as running injuries tend to be a little bit more irritated by faster running. So I'd rather add a few more kilometers to the overall weekly volume rather than trying to run faster and risk stirring things up again. What we absolutely don't want to do is add more kilometers to the week and add some extra intensity in as well. Add one thing at a time and then see how the injury responds. And then the following week, you can do the same again. You can keep doing that and see how it's progressing week on week. And you should be able to sort of project forward and decide, okay, I don't think I'm really going to be in good shape for this race. I'm going to have to pull out. Or, you know what, this is getting more and more each week and I can see my fitness improving. Maybe I will be ready to run the race on race day. This brings me nicely on to my next question. So if you've decided you are going to be running through pain, how do you run through pain? Well, as we just mentioned, the first thing to do is to try and add a little bit of volume before you add any intensity, because the intensity is going to be a little bit more stressful on that injured area. The other thing that I get injured runners to do is to add in walk breaks. And there's a few different ways you can do that. One easy way that I use quite a lot is to just every kilometer walk for 30 seconds. So as you're running along, you'll hit a kilometer. Usually the app on your phone or your watch will beep at you. You just stop and walk for a count of 30 and then start running again. That's a nice easy one. Another one is to set it up on your watch or your app so that you take a walk break of maybe a minute for every 9 minutes of running, for example. But either way, all we're trying to do is break up the run to have little walk breaks during the run. The reason is that these run walks will afford us most of the physiological benefits and training effects that come with that workout. However, the mechanical stress on the injured tissue won't be building up the whole time, as it'll get a little break whenever we take that walk break. What that usually results in is that you can actually do more total minutes of running if you do those run walk breaks, and that tends to be a stronger training stimulus. The last thing that I get injured runners to do is to take their weekly kilometers and spread them out over more runs. So for example, say your training program typically involves running 4 times a week. We're going to increase that to 6 times a week and take that 30 kilometers that you normally do over 4 runs and do it over the 6. So we might run 5K 6 times instead of doing longer runs, but just the 4 of them. Okay, last up. How do I catch up to my training plan if I've been injured? Well, don't. Trying to catch up to your training plan will force you to increase the training stress even quicker than was originally intended in the original training program. You already got yourself injured doing that rate of increase in training stress, and now you're asking if you can increase your training stress even quicker than that. This is almost certainly a recipe for disaster. So rather than trying to run the same amount of mileage or workouts that are prescribed in your training plan, what I try and get people to do is to replace that running workout with a cross-training workout. Now, before you roll your eyes and say, I hate cross-training and that's not going to help me run any faster or any further, what I suggest people do is replace their running workouts one-to-one with cross-training workouts. So for example, say you've got a hill session planned and you're going to do 8 times 30-second sprints up a hill. Instead of doing that because let's say your knee hurts, we're going to go on the bike and we're going to go 8 times 30 seconds as hard as we can. So when we hit that 30-second interval, you crank up the resistance on the bike and then you push it out as hard as you can. Your heart and lungs and muscles don't know that much difference between running and cycling. They just know for that 30 seconds, they're going crazy hard. And that's the training stimulus that we're after. Yes, it's not exactly the same as running, but what we're looking for is to recreate the physiological demands of the workouts without adding all that mechanical stress to the injured area. If you'd like to know a little bit more about how exactly to replace running workouts with cross-training workouts and still get the physiological benefits and training effects that we're looking for, I've written an article that talks about this at great length. So I'll link that up in the description. To sum up, just running through pain is clearly the wrong approach and it's not likely to work. However, complete rest from running and avoiding pain at all costs when you have an injury is almost certainly not going to work either. If you're having pain with running, work with an expert and use the advice in this episode to help include running as part of your recovery strategy. Thanks for watching, guys. That video was part of my Running Fundamentals course, which is a free online course, and you can check out the next video in the series right here. You can also sign up to receive the entire course delivered to your inbox. Just click the link in the description.